Oh, well, the former British Prime Minister once said that this was when she was answering a Liberal, a member of Parliament, accusing her of not having done enough to narrow the gap between the poor and the rich. And I'm just paraphrasing. She said that, "Honorable member, for you would rather see the poor becoming more poorer as long as the richer becoming less richer. In other words, bridging the gap between the poor and the rich would then make the rich become more poorer to be equal with the poor folks." What am I talking about? This couple of days ago, Pierre De Vos, is it Pierre De Vos or Pierre De Vos? Constitutional professor, on the 10th of June, headline, "Privilege and Inheritance, Time to Disrupt Intergenerational Transfer of Wealth." He says, what are the solutions that is suggesting? Well, take the inheritance of the rich and give it to the poor. Obviously, that's not going to be happening directly, taking the inheritance, riches, and transferring it to the poor. No. He's suggesting tax, obviously, right? So, when you have worked hard, right, your whole life, maybe you come from poor family, you work hard, your domestic worker mom teach you to school, you go to university, you become successful, you open up a business, then you become rich. You're a founder and a CEO of a company, and then when you die, all your wealth that you've worked hard for your sons and daughters, that when you die, you're going to leave something for them that they will never be as poor as you've ever been in your whole life. What does Pierre De Vos suggest? All that inheritance of yours is going to be taxed, right? Goes to the government and be distributed equally among the rest of the folks of South Africa. But wait, he's just basically saying that we have to take the riches from the Caucasian, the white folks, and give it to the poor, obviously through tax, and then everything will be hunky-dory. But I must say that he conceded that when the inheritance tax is going to be taken away from the white folks, well, there's going to be a collateral damage, okay? He concedes that, yeah, you know, families like the gentleman who opened up a mall in Soweto, Maponya Mall, he's got a foundations. He started his family business. His family right now, also the sons and some of the folks, family members now, they're continuing with that legacy, the business. So in other words, the gentleman's inheritance tax, he has to be taxed and the money has to go to the poor. So this is the logic that's just been going on. And this is one of the biggest problems with liberalism right now, especially white liberalism, where I don't know whether it's a form of saying let's overcompensate for the injustices that has happened in the past, but as a result, this doesn't help in terms of solution in making the society progress. You know what I mean? The most important thing that needs to be done, you have to uplift society as a whole. You have to make sure that the poor working class becomes the working middle class. And the working middle class becomes the upper working middle class. But what makes this to happen? You have to have better policies as a government. You have to create an environment where people are going to excel in terms of opening their own businesses. Not what's been happening right now. Small business, it's the most vital industry that continue to hire people. Giant corporate companies do not hire people like small businesses. Okay? If you open up a small business as an individual, you then end up hiring, let's just say, 50 people. Okay? And another person also open up small businesses and they start hiring more and more people. Whereas corporate companies, they level up. They just level up. If a company now maybe hires a maximum of about 5,000 people, more or less, it's just going to be a continuous number of that people where the company is able to execute its job, also has to then make sure that those employees are being paid the same amount that they're getting and steadily moving up. You see what I mean? By saying that the government has to encourage an environment where people will find it easy to open up businesses. Right now we're hearing stories about the government looking into taxing small businesses, such as folks at who are in like townships who have back rooms, where in those back rooms obviously people are paying rent. Now the government wants to take its hands and stick it up into the pockets of those people who are just basically trying to survive, because you cannot call such kind of a business where you're renting back rooms in your neighborhood as a giant business. So businesses like that, the government should come up with plans, okay, plans of maybe coordinating such kind of people who are into renting to find a way in which they can come up with nice ideas, where if those people are trying to now starting, say, small hotels or lodges or motels, grouping them all together in order to start business like that. And then when those businesses are now starting to boom a little bit, then that's when they can say, we're going to tax you. But this is not what's happening. So this idea of the liberals who are always trying to find excuses or making sure that the poor communities are to be always seeing themselves as victims, it's impeding on them in order to have a mentality of being able to just say, you know what, this is a democratic republic. We've been in democracies for over 20 years. I can go out there and start a business and be something by myself. I don't want somebody to come and tell me that I come from an underprivileged community. Poor me, I can't be able to do something. And then as a result, this encourages poverty. I'm going to read a little bit of the excerpts of what Pierre De Vos has said in his document, right? Opinion piece. There's where he speak about, I guess it's a professor, Thomas Piketty. He says, it struck Thomas Piketty as odd the Australian government imposed no taxes on those who had been bequeathed multi-million-dollar property, while governments in the United States and Europe taxed the same gifts at between 40 and 45%. Japan raised its top inheritance tax rate from 45 to 55% last year, Professor Piketty said. This was under a right-wing government, by the way. Right? Anyway, so here, I guess this needs to be updated because Donald Trump now has just passed a law where the inheritance tax is no more. If you have a ranch or some business where when you die, then you're not going to pay the death tax. So that's also wrong. It continues. Some of the excerpts that I am reading. I spotted a headline to the effect that a group of white people had given up or had pledged to give up their white privilege. I cringed at the glibness of the headline and moved swiftly on. To abolish the system of intergenerational inheritance, or at least to heavily tax intergenerational inheritance and donations. Writing about white privilege from an American perspective, Corey Collins argues that the ability to accumulate wealth has long been a white privilege, a privilege created by overt, systematic racism in both the public and private sectors. The racial wealth gap is not closed when black people attend university. Collins thus concludes. The gap instead relies largely on inheritance, wealth passed from one generation to the next, and that wealth often comes in the form of inherited homes with value. When white families are able to accumulate wealth because of their earning power or home value, they are more likely to support their children into early adulthood, helping with an expenses such as college education, first cars, and first home. The cycle continues, he says. Of course, intergenerational inheritance does not only benefit white people, although it disproportionately benefits us, and the abolition of radical curtailment of inheritance would also impact on wealthy black people and their offsprings. Here, that's where he's conceding that when I'm going to be doing the benevolent act of taking the riches of white folks and distributing it to black folks, I'm also going to be taking the riches of wealthy black folks. So this is his contention. The idea that folks in black communities do not aspire to be rich, to do well, to leave a good legacy for their kids, or for them to be able to be successful. You just have to make them feel like they're victims all the time. You don't want to create opportunities for them to move up the ladders. There are a lot of people with mad, crazy ideas in the neighborhood, but they're not getting opportunity to be able to do that. And all what people need is an opportunity for them to be able to start their businesses and thrive. It's an environment. You have to create an environment where small businesses are to thrive. Right now we're having a big problem where the small and medium businesses are suffering right now as a result of COVID. There was about 500 million rands allocated to them. And if you do a quick search on Statistic SA, each and every month, the small medium business makes about 22 billion rands. You know, the quarter, each and every quarter they make an average of 63 billion rands. But then now, the government is given 500 million rands in order to rescue small businesses, of which 20 billion rands is needed, okay, in order to help all the small businesses. So now they are applying and fighting over a crumb of 500 million rands, where an additional 19 billion and 500 million rands is required to assist them. No wonder why all the websites are crashing, because you've got a lot of people who then wants to apply and get the amount, but they won't be able to get that amount because the amount is small. So these are one of those reasons where the small business is not thriving. Pierre De Vos also talks about, I'm going to get to this quickly. Okay? Oh yes. There's where, when he advocates for the taking of money from rich folks through the inheritance tax. Remember, inheritance tax is in two ways. Even if you can say that you're taking the tax from the people who have benefited through their white privilege, there are also folks who just started their businesses, let's just say from the last 20 years. They've started their own giant corporate companies. Yeah, they're white. So the tax obviously at the end of the day is not going to see color. So this is not the right way in order to make the whole nation, all the people of all different races in the republic, to move ahead. And there's where now is backtracking. It's kind of funny. I'm quickly going to find where it's saying this. Oh, he says, others will point out potential practical problems or will argue that imposing decisive limitations on the intergenerational transfer of wealth may be incompatible with global financial system we operate in. Yet others would argue that the abolition of inheritance or the imposition of steep inheritance tax potentially infringes on the right to property guaranteed in Section 25 of the Constitution. See how he's backtracking? He doesn't want to be associated with folks and other political parties that says that now we should expropriate the land without compensation. So it's an oops moment for Pierre De Vos. So this is what's happening. This is the big problem that we're having with white liberals. This is happening in the States. You see what's happening in the States now? The solutions to places where there's poverty, they always come up with ideas that will make poor communities to become even more and more poorer. That's what they do. So now they're alleging that, there in the United States, they're alleging that there's voter suppression. There's the systematic voter suppression that is being done to African Americans. African Americans are systematically oppressed in such a way that it makes it difficult for them to vote. You know why is that? They talk about voter ID registration, where they're saying black folks are not able to go to places where they can have their identity document in order for them to vote. How stupid is that? But the intention is not about, it's not about that. Obviously the intention is to just say everybody can just go to a polling station and vote. So as a result, then you will have voter frauds. The list goes on and on and on. Okay? If there's a suppression or injustices perpetuated against black folks, for instance in the States, in terms of the police, you cannot come to a neighborhood and say, now that there's police brutality in your neighborhood, then we have to close the police station. What kind of a solution is that? If you close the police station in an area, who's going to be running that area? If you're having people breaking into your house and you call emergency services and you've done away with the police department, who's going to come to your rescue? So this is such madness that we're seeing that are being perpetuated by the liberals. And by the way, I remember J.J. Thurman once said that, I'm just paraphrasing, it's amazing how whenever there are television interviews or radio interviews, you only see 1 or 2 constitutional lawyers in this republic where we have over 20 universities. And the other constitutional professors in those universities, rather than each and every time you switch on your TV, you go to ENCA, you go to SABC or Newsroom Africa, all you see is Pierre De Vos or 1 or 2 constitutional professors. We need to have all other professors, okay? Conservative professors, middle of the road political professors, leftist professors, right-wing professors, a whole mix when it comes to issues that are important in this republic, so that the people can then be able to make their own decision, rather than having all this news channel always calling 1 or 2 constitutional professors. So that's my take, and I'm out.